Welcome to Hart County Public Library Outreach Virtual Storytime. We are so glad that you could join us. Wacky Wednesday is one of my favorite Dr. Seuss books. While he is the author of this book, Dr. Seuss did not draw the illustrations. A man named George Booth is the illustrator. You will need to look at his illustrations very carefully to discover what is wacky on each page. I bet some of you have already noticed what is wacky about the cover of this book. That's right, the I Can Read It All By Myself logo is upside down. Be prepared to find many wackier things on the pages of Wacky Wednesday. It all began with that shoe on the wall. A shoe on a wall shouldn't be there at all. Look at that shoe on the wall. That really is wacky. Shoes just can't hang on the wall like that. Then I looked up and I said, "Oh man!" And that's how Wacky Wednesday began. Well, now let's see here. There's that shoe that was on the wall already, but when he looked up, he saw a brown boot on the ceiling. And if you look even more carefully, you'll notice that on the clock, on the dresser, the numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 11. There's no 10. That's wacky. I looked out the window and I said, "Gee, more things were wacky." And I saw 3. Let's find those 3 wacky things on these 2 pages. Let's see. Oh, look over here at the hose. A part of it's missing, yet the water is still coming out. And then look up in the tree. There are bananas growing in an apple tree. That's wacky. And then look down there on the ground. A worm is chasing a bird instead of the bird going after the worm. I went down the hall and I said, "Hey, 3 more things were wacky today." Let's find those 3 wacky things. So if I start on the page on the left, I notice an upside down picture hanging on the wall. And when you move over to the second page, look at that table. There's a candy cane holding it up instead of a table leg. And then finally, the third wacky thing, look at the door. 2 doorknobs? Why would you ever need 2 doorknobs on the same side? That's wacky. In the bathroom, more. In the bathroom, 4. Let's find those 4 wacky things. Well, the first thing I notice is that the boy is in the shower with a sock on. We don't wear our socks in the shower. And then the next wacky thing I notice is the fish in a jar with a stopper on it. Eventually, he would run out of air. And then over here on the other page, I notice that if I look at the sink, one of the faucets is upside down. And finally, on this page, look at the toilet. Trees can't grow out of toilets. That's just whack. I began to dress. Then I said, "Wow, 4 more things were wacky now." Now, we already knew about the shoe on the wall and the boot on the ceiling. We've got to find 4 more wacky things. And the first thing I notice is the other boot on the ceiling. And look underneath the bed. There's a boot there too. Then why don't we check out the clock, because something was wrong with it last time. The number 10 was missing. But when I look at it this time, the numbers are all in the wrong place. And finally, the last wacky thing, take a look at the chair. A part of it is missing. That chair wouldn't be able to stand up like that. That's whack. I looked in the kitchen. I said, "By cracky, 5 more things are very wacky. If I have to find that many wacky things, I better start using numbers so I don't lose count. The first thing I notice is an insect holding up the refrigerator. Then, underneath the cabinets, I notice some coffee cups hanging there, but the last one's hanging without a hook. On the stove, there looks to be a pot of food cooking, but there's an umbrella inside it. Then on the table, where a plate should be, that whole part of the table is missing. And finally, down in the bottom corner, the cat is being chased by the mouse. That's not right. It should be the other way around. So I found all 5 wacky things. I was late for school. I started along, and I saw that 6 more things were wrong. So let's start over here on the left-hand side to find the 6 wacky things. The first thing I notice is a set of stairs that lead up to a window and not a door. Look at the door over there on the other side. You'd never be able to get in that house. Moving over to the next house, the second wacky thing I notice is a tree growing out of the chimney. That can't happen. And then if you still take a look at that house, look at the third thing that's wacky. You walk up the stairs, there's no door at all. And the fourth wacky thing I notice is on the next page. There's just a window and nothing else there. And if you move down from that window onto the sidewalk, look at the lady pushing the baby stroller, but there's a tiger inside. That's wacky. And finally, I think the funniest thing on this page is number 6. Look carefully inside the car. The man is driving from the back seat. That's wacky. And then 7 more. Let's find those 7 wacky things. So on the first page, I noticed that a wall is missing from that second house. That's one wacky thing. Look at the sun by that house. It's green instead of yellow. So that makes 2 wacky things. And then move straight down from the sun to the street, and there's one of those crazy shoes, and a critter's wearing this one. So that's 3 wacky things on the first page. On the second page, I noticed that utility pole. The top part of it's there, but it doesn't go all the way to the ground. How would that be able to stay up? So that's our 4th wacky thing. And the 5th wacky thing is right next to it. It's that traffic signal. Take a look at it. Stop is green and go is red. We all know that red stands for stop and green stands for go. So if I move down from the utility pole to the car, take a look at the driver. That's the 6th wacky thing. He's wearing a boot on his head. And the last wacky thing, number 7, is the fella in the back seat. It's like he's the one that's moving the car with his legs. And the Sutherland sisters, they looked wacky too. They said, "Nothing is wacky around here but you." Those Sutherland sisters really are wacky. Look at the sister in the middle. She's missing her legs. And look at the sister in front. Her neck is missing. I bet the boy in the story's head is starting to hurt, because I know mine would if all that craziness was going on in my neighborhood. "But look," I yelled, 8 things are wrong here at school." "Nothing is wrong," they said. "Don't be a fool." The first strange thing I notice is the turtle at the top of the tree. Turtles don't climb trees. And hanging from that tree is another one of those crazy shoes. And then take a look at that sign in front of the school. It's supposed to say "for sale." For is spelled F-O-R, but that is F-U-R on that sign, and that's fur sale, like fur on an animal. And speaking of animals, look at the 2 tigers staring out the window of the school. Now, I've had kids that act like animals before in my class, but I've never had any real tigers. The fifth wacky thing I noticed is that the word school is misspelled. It should be spelled S-C-H-O-O-L. And then if you look at the flagpole, you'll see the sixth wacky thing. It's that crazy shoe perched at the very top of the flagpole. Now move on down that flagpole a little bit and you'll see number 7, the flag itself. The stars are where the stripes should be and the stripes are where the stars should be. And if you keep moving on down that flagpole, you will see that a piece of the flagpole is missing. There is no way that that flagpole could stand up with a missing piece. I ran into school. I yelled to Miss Bass, "Look, 9 things are wacky right here in your class." Wow, there really are a lot of wacky things going on in this classroom. Look at the teacher. She's wearing roller skates. When I was teaching, I sometimes felt like I needed roller skates. And look at her desk. There's a shoe on one of the desk legs. Now, if you move on up, I bet you'll find the third wacky thing in the alphabet. Look at how it's written up on the board. Q-R-S-T-U-V-W-X-Z? No. Y and Z are switched. The next wacky thing I noticed is that one of the Sutherland sisters is standing on the head of another student. That's funny too, I think. And then, if you look at that picture on the wall, it says George Washington, but that's a picture of Abraham Lincoln. So that's 5 wacky things. Now, look back at that poor student who the Sutherland sister was standing on his head. He doesn't have a seat either. That poor kid, he's really having a bad day. And if you stay in that same row of students and you go back 2 desks, look, it's an old man. And then go to the other row of students and you'll see that the student in the middle is turned around facing the wrong way. And probably the wackiest student of all is the student that has no head. Nothing is wacky here in my class. Get out. You're the wacky one. Out, said Miss Bass. There are a few wacky things on this page too. Take a look at that picture on the wall. It says George Washington, and it isn't even a picture of George Washington. It's a picture of Ulysses S. Grant. Then, if you notice the plant on the teacher's desk, her phone wire is running through it. And then, look at where the wire leads to. There's a mouse chewing on it. That's just wacky. I went out the school door. Things were worse than before. I couldn't believe it. 10 wacky things more. So we have to find 10 wacky things on these 2 pages. The first wacky thing I noticed is that the boy in our story has an alligator on a leash. Now that's not something you see every day. Take a look at the flagpole. Look at that flag. Instead of red and white stripes, they're blue and white stripes. And there's a red square where there should be a blue square, and all the stars are missing. Look at the bottom of the flagpole. There's that pesky shoe. And if you look at the buildings in the back on that page, there's a building just floating in the air. So that makes 4 wacky things so far. On the next page, the 5th wacky thing I noticed is the statue in the fountain. It's a statue of George Washington, but look, he's turned around riding his horse the wrong way. And keep on looking at that fountain because there's an old man sitting on a bench in the fountain instead of outside of it. And next to the fountain, look at that tree in front of it. It's growing out of a shoe. And on the street, there's a lady pushing a baby carriage, but she's pushing it on top of a car. You can't do that. That's just wacky. And on the front of that car is another one of those crazy shoes. And then the 10th wacky thing I noticed is a giraffe sticking up out of the manhole. Then I counted 11. There are a lot of wacky things happening on these 2 pages, and a lot of those wacky things have to do with baby carriages. But first notice that tree at the top of the page on the left. There's a chimney stack coming out of it. That's impossible. Then look at the tree next to it. It's growing out of a baby carriage. And if you keep on looking at the trees, notice that one of them is yellow while all the rest of them are green. Now take a look at the baby carriage being pushed by the lady in the green coat. There's not a baby in there. It's an alligator. That's just wacky. Now take a look at that sign. Instead of saying for sale like it did earlier, it now does say for sale, but it's the wrong spelling for for. It should be F-O-R instead of F-O-U-R. That spelling means the number 4. The 6th wacky thing I notice is the door on that building. It's turned sideways. No one could get in that door. And then look at the top of the building at the smoke trail coming off. There's a shoe at the end of it. Those shoes just keep popping up everywhere. Now, take a look at the sidewalk where you see all the baby carriages. Remember how I said that a lot of the wacky things had to do with baby carriages? Look at that one way back in the back. There's no baby in there. That's an old man. And if you move up from that one to the lady in the pink dress, look at the baby carriage she's pushing. There are no wheels. Keep on moving up a little more. Look at the lady in the purple dress with the purple baby carriage. There's only one wheel in the front and nothing in the back. And then the 11th wacky thing is that baby carriage next to the lady in purple. It has a ski on the front of it instead of a wheel. Then 12 worse things. I got scared and I ran. I ran and knocked over Patrolman McGann. These baby buggies just keep getting stranger and stranger. But before we talk about any of the strollers, take a look at the background on these 2 pages. Look in the top left corner. There is a set of windows that just seem to be floating in the air. They're not attached to any building. Move over to the right and you'll see an airplane that looks as if it's getting ready to land on the street. Now that's wacky, but also look at the way those lines are drawn. It makes it seem as if the airplane is flying backwards. Now look at the cars. Part of that bridge is missing and the cars just have to jump from one side to the next. So far that's 3 wacky things. Now let's take a look at that grassy area that the sidewalk wraps around. Look at that pig. He has chicken legs. I have never seen a pig like that. And take a glance at the cow next to him. It has 2 rear ends and no head. I guess we can look at the baby buggies now. Look at the one in the front. I've seen baby carriages that hold 2 babies. I've even seen ones that hold 3 babies. But I've never seen a baby carriage that holds that many babies. Moving on around the sidewalk, we find a door. You're not going to find a door on a sidewalk. That's the 7th wacky thing. After the door, look at that baby carriage. The wheels are on the woman's legs and the shoes are on the baby carriage. And after that stroller, the next one is being pushed by a tiger. So 9 wacky things. Moving on around, look at the next baby carriage. The lady has no shoes on. They're behind her. That makes 10 wacky things. And look at the 11th crazy thing going on. That baby carriage is upside down. And the last baby carriage is being pushed by the baby and the mother's inside. That makes 12 wacky things. I'm sorry, Patrolman. That's all I could say. Don't be sorry, he smiled. It's that kind of a day. But be glad, Wacky Wednesday will soon go away. Poor Patrolman McGann. Why, he's balancing on just one hand, and that hand is inside a Wacky Wednesday shoe. Why, just look at his badge. Instead of a regular policeman's badge, it's a shoe badge. I guess that only happens on Wacky Wednesday. Only 20 things more will be wacky, he said. Just find them, and then you can go back to bed. Finding 20 wacky things is a big job, but I know we can do it. Let's start at the top of the page on the left and move across to the right. In the very top left-hand corner, I see the road, and it's starting from the sky. Moving to the right, I see 2 suns. That's not right. There should only be one. Next, I see a floating house. And continuing to move right, I see a floating car. And even farther to the right, I see a tree, and a big part of its trunk is missing. Next, I see a smokestack that's not attached to the building. And finally, I see 3 houses stacked one on top of each other. That's 7 wacky things. Now let's look at the road. I see an airplane on the road driving like a car. Also in the road is a lady pushing a baby carriage in the middle of traffic. That's not safe. Move on down and to the left, and you see a bush attached to a wheel. It's a bush unicycle. Next to it, you see a man on a park bench upside down. He's really celebrating Wacky Wednesday. Now let's look at the ladies pushing the baby carriages. The lady in white has no head. The lady in blue is pushing the carriage from a chair. The lady in red, why, look at that baby carriage. The baby's legs are through the bottom of the carriage, and that's how it's moving. Above her carriage is a bush growing out of a shoe. And finally, the lady in pink is pushing her baby carriage. I see her, and I see the baby, but there's no body to the baby carriage. That makes 16 wacky things. We're almost finished. We need to find only 4 more wacky things. So let's move down and back to the left and take a look at the sidewalk. Oh my goodness, it's rolling up. Next, look at Patrolman McGann. He has 3 legs. And remember that pig? He had chicken legs before. Now that pig has no legs at all. And finally, look in the pond. Instead of a man catching fish, it's a fish catching a man. We have now found all 20 wacky things. Wacky Wednesday was gone when I counted them all, and I even got rid of that shoe on the wall. The end. I hope you never have a Wednesday this wacky. But in case you do, remember all you need to do to return to normal is just count all the wacky things.